So just to review the plotting that we did, this is a seaborn function, this point plot, and this allows us to just create a plot without defining the figure or doing any of the Matplotlib sort of syntax. We can then, however, still use a Matplotlib function, so we use this xticks rotation equals the angle that we want to rotate our labels to get this to look better, because if we had just run this without the rotation, the labels all overlap with each other. And then we can also suppress any kind of text output with this semicolon. However, if we wanted to use the Matplotlib syntax as well and have more access to the various handles, we could create a figure object, for example, using subplots, where we define the figure and the axis. In this case, it's just a single axis, so there's only one subplot. We can still use this seaborn function, but we can also, and this is optional, but if we want to have a multiple subplot, we can use seaborn to plot to one of the axes in the subplot using this axis handle. So if this was a multi-paned plot, we could specify the number, because this ax object, if there are multiple subplots, will be an array of all the axis handles. Right now it's only one handle because it's only one subplot. But if there were multiple subplots, this would be an array, and so we could specify which of those elements in the array, which axis handle we meant to plot this to as an argument to our seaborn function. And then to rename the labels using on the axis handle, which again would be if we had multiple subplots, we could specify different things to each of the different subplots. So we can say we have to specify. So we have to use this set xtick labels, which is with PLT we have this xticks function, but on axis handles we don't have that function. We have to use this set xticks labels, and that requires us to specify what the labels are. So we can do get xtick labels from the axis and then just reapply those, and then we can then apply the rotation. So two different ways to get the same output, and so that's a little plotting aside there. So next up, we're going to cover pivot, which is there's two functions. There's pivot and pivot tables that have slight difference. Pivot tables is more flexible and allows you to have duplicate values, but we'll see pivot first. What pivot does is it reshapes your data, producing a pivot table based on column values, and it uses unique values from the index and columns to form the axes of the resulting data frame. So you pass the index, the columns, and the values that you want your new data frame to have. And so these can either be lists or single strings or objects. So for a first simple example, we're going to create a data frame that has just a numerical index and then 3 columns: bar, baz, foo. Bar is going to be ABC, ABC. Baz will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And foo will be 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2 as strings. So if we do a pivot with index equals foo, so our new indexes will be 1 and 2. Columns bar, so our new columns will be ABC, and values will be baz. You can see that it easily pivots that to something new. And this works because the values that we supplied, or excuse me, it just works because we're able to combine these indexes and columns in a new position. Basically, the combinations of these things don't. There are no repeat permutations of these two columns. So we have A1, B1, C1, and then A2, B2, C2. So these values don't get overlapped with each other. And we can get the same thing. So if we did, yeah, we can basically get the same thing by effectively it creates a multi-level index with the remaining columns. So we have one column of that's our indexes, another column that's our columns, and then the remaining columns will be a multi-level column index. And so to get, if we want to remove that label, we can just call it like this, and it'll give us all the same information, but without that label at the top. Yeah.
So I also noticed that if you comment that out, it puts like that as a title.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's not really a title. It's a multi-level column index. So to show you, let's do, yeah, let's do this. So you can make another so that works. That still works. But if we did so, and if we did let's call that then we can do df pivot. So it's a multi-level index, whereas so that's a good question, because I don't think I emphasized that column headers are, we call them columns, but they're index also, and they can also be multi-level. So we can have multiple levels of the indexes on the left side, and we can have multiple levels of the columns on the top. So that's what's happening there if we want to see just the same thing that we had before, we just use that column header to just pull out this half of the data frame. So here we're going to don't worry about what's happening here. We're basically generating a data frame that has dates. So we have dates from January 3rd to 5th, 3rd to 5th, 3rd to 5th, 3rd to 5th, and then variables A, B, C, D, and then some random values. So this is a great example, a great case where we might want to pivot. So if we just wanted the data for variable A, we could say we want this data frame where the value of variable is A. And this would give us just this part. So that works, but if we wanted to do some time series operations, we might want a case where The columns are unique variables, and the index has the dates. So we can do pivot in this case. So we can reshape the data using pivot function. So we're going to say the index is now going to be the date column, the columns are going to be that variable column, and the values are going to be that value column. So we now have a case where we have the date is now our index, and the column names are A, B, C, D, and then the values are in our data frame. So this is really handy for plotting. We saw this a few weeks ago when we first introduced plotting and how you get different behavior if your time series, if you have this date time index that we talked about last time, if you have that date time index as your index and not as another column, you can get some nice behavior in your plots. So what we're going to do is just a basic Matplotlib plot function where we're plotting the index as the x-axis and the columns A, B, C, D as the y-axis, and we give them 4 colors. We're going to add a legend, and we're going to format the labels. We're going to create a list where we're formatting the dates for our labels and then applying those labels to the positions. So I can suppress output there. So what we get is now we're doing this. We can use this rotation function of Matplotlib to rotate our labels, and we have 4 series that are really neatly generated. Now, you can also imagine using one of the many Seaborn functions to plot the same pivoted data frame, right? Because Seaborn has all these built-in functions. You wouldn't maybe need to enter all this extra information to get the plot, but it's a really handy way to get from this, which is not readily plottable in the same way that this is.